When it comes to pruning your peppers, the question always is there a big difference? And if so, what is the difference? I have here one row of peppers that have not been pruned, one row of peppers that have been pruned. We're gonna look at them, really assess the actual differences between pruned peppers, how we pruned, and what could be the potential pros and cons of pruning your peppers. Let's go. So this here is a jalapeno plant that I started from seed in early March. And what you'll notice is that it's really tall. This is unpruned. This is the unpruned version. And it's not putting a ton of fruit on yet. We were kind of late to planting. It was pretty cold. They got a very late start, but they've bounced back remarkably well. They are filling out quite nicely. They're beautiful, green, seem really healthy, and they are loaded with blossoms. But one thing you'll notice is just how tall the plant is. It's got just a really long stem, not much branching, and then the branching begins up top here. Now, again, am I unhappy with this? No, I'm not. I'm not unhappy with this. And in Michigan, this is usually what our pepper plants look like. This is very normal for us. And eventually, it's gonna form fruit. We might get 2 or 3 harvests before the first frost comes and knocks the plants out. So ultimately, I'm very used to how these look. One thing that you wanna notice is that it's quite top heavy. Here at the farm, it gets really windy. And my one concern is because it's so top heavy, because it's so tall, it's really bushy at the top, and it's got just a little spindly stem here. I mean, and they're good sized stems, but there's not a lot of heft to them. They are really toppy, really, top heavy. And because of that, I'm worried that they might tip over, especially once they get fruit on them. They might tip over, might snap. And so ultimately, this is something that we do contend with every year that we grow peppers, is that here in Michigan, we get quite breezy weather. You get peppers that are pretty top heavy, quite tall, and ultimately, sometimes you lose some plants or you lose some stems because they look like this. This is unpruned. Now let's check out a pruned version. Check it out, this one is a pruned jalapeno. Now you'll notice quite a stark difference. Look at the center of gravity, it's much lower to the ground. And you'll notice the canopy is much wider. This has a really dense canopy. It's quite filled out compared to the very upright. I mean, if I'm drawing a line across the other jalapeno plant, we're talking almost double the height. Double the height, and I would say, well, the unpruned version is double the height. This is half the height, and it's twice as much foliage. I feel much better about this pruned version. But the one thing you'll notice, almost no flowers. This is something that I really wanted to see. I've talked about pruning peppers for a long time. I've talked about the benefits of pruning your peppers and the benefits of not pruning your peppers depending on where you live, how long your growing season is, the type of pepper you're growing. Certain peppers grow faster than others. Certain peppers will fruit faster than others. And so jalapenos, they fruit pretty fast. And because you can eat them very immature or fully ripe, jalapeno was a really great example for this because it was super low stakes for me to just kind of put it to the test. So one thing you'll notice, like I said, tons more stability, tons more foliage, but almost no flowers, no flowers. The other one is loaded with new flowers that are gonna be opening up in the next week or so. This has none. This has maybe, you see like 2 or 3 flowers on this plant. And that is because, well, obviously, we've pruned it back, we've set it back, and we were already at a late start for the year. All things considered though, that's how it would be any year, is that when you prune back the plant, it has to then re-sprout new leaves, new branches, and that ultimately is gonna set it back because the leaves are what's generating energy for the plant. And when we cut it back, we are allowing it to fork and branch and create a lot more growth. It's just gonna take a lot longer to get there. So is this better? The thing that I kind of get hung up on is what's the definition of better? For me, is it better? I don't know. The season's still fairly young. We'll follow along as this progresses. But I would venture to say that for us here in Michigan, this has its benefits, but only if I was growing in maybe a greenhouse or I had, I don't know, some type of coverage to protect it from frost. Because my season is the season that I have, I still would venture to say that for me, you might differ, I like the unpruned version. Just the number of flowers that are already opening up means I'm gonna get peppers that much sooner. Whereas I couldn't even begin to tell you when I'm gonna get fruit off this plant. Does it look healthier? Absolutely. Does it look more sturdy? Absolutely. You let me know. I still think that there is merit to pruning peppers. I just think it's based on, like I said, a couple different factors. I've already talked about a couple of those factors, but I want to touch on a few more just to kind of give you the option, because I do get asked all the time, should I prune my peppers? Should I not? And ultimately, I keep telling people it comes down to you and your growing conditions and a few other factors. So let's talk about those. So after comparing the pruned versus unpruned peppers, again, they're both the early jalapeno. So I have 3 plants that have not been pruned and 3 plants that have, and they all look very similar. So I feel pretty safe in my assessment here of what I'm about to say. Now, again, if you want to experiment, it's your garden. You do you, and that's totally fine. If you like to prune your peppers, go for it, all for it. Couple things I'd say. If you want to prune your peppers, I would start your seeds much earlier. Obviously, the earlier you start, the longer they're going to be growing. So any pruning you do can be made up. You can make up for lost time a lot faster than doing it right in the middle of the growing season. I pruned these peppers just before planting them out in the garden. So when I planted these out, I pruned them about 4 weeks ago. And I pruned them about 5 weeks ago, actually. Well, maybe 4 weeks ago. I lose track of time out here, but it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago that I pruned these. And it's taken that long just to get to where they are now. So had I started them 2 or 3, maybe even 4 weeks earlier, I would have been starting them, yes, in early February, but I would have had all that much more time growing them indoors where they could kind of get up size to kind of get up to where they need to be to make up for that lost time. Second thing to consider is the type of pepper. I think this is something that a lot of people just don't really associate with pruning versus not pruning, but I don't think it could be more important when you're looking at the assessment. So if you're talking about a small pepper, this is like our pepper Encini, they put out a ton of peppers and they're relatively small. They grow really fast. Bell peppers, these are some bell peppers here, they take a long time, they put out very few fruit, and the fruit that they do put out is really large. Jalapenos are kind of in that middle ground. They are decent sized, but they're not big by any means. And because of that, I call them like a medium sized pepper. You know, they get that big or so. And they put out a lot of them. So they grow pretty fast. They put out a lot of peppers. And when you're looking at those different comparisons, small peppers, productive peppers, big peppers, not so productive, and medium, kind of get the best of both worlds, you can decide which ones I would prune from there. So if you were, yes, I think pruning is great, I still think there are peppers that I wouldn't prune. If I thought pruning was the best thing in the world, best thing since sliced bread, I still would not prune these bell peppers. The reason being is they are so much slower to grow, so much slower to produce, so much less fruit per plant, that the appeal would say, if I could get 5 bell peppers or 8 bell peppers, why wouldn't I almost double my harvest? The problem is you never know what the season holds, and you might not get those 8 bell peppers. You might set yourself back so far that you never even get a harvest of even 5. So it's like almost like a bird in the hand or 2 in the bush. Have you ever heard that saying? It basically means that by not pruning, if the season goes according to plan, I've got 1 bird in my hand. I don't need to get greedy. I've got a great plant. It has its flaws, sure. But if I get ahead of myself and I say, well, I could have 2 birds, you prune it. What happens if you get an early frost? It's like, oh man, my plant spent the whole growing season growing and not producing hardly anything. That kind of stinks. And so then the 2 birds that were in the bush, they fly away and you end up with nothing. So in a weird roundabout way, there's a lot of things in life like that. There's a lot of sage advice in that. Be content with what you have. I think, we as gardeners can sometimes manipulate stuff to our advantage. Certainly. I think there is merit in pruning your peppers. I just think there's things to consider. There's definitely things to consider, like growing season, types of peppers, as well as just, your overall desire to get more. Are you happy with what it's going to produce, or do you need more? Right? If I needed more, I'd put them in a greenhouse where I could grow them longer, and heck yeah, I'd prune them. But because I don't, this is going to be way more than enough peppers, I'm also fine not pruning. But The last thing as well is you have to be okay with the risks. I am aware that a strong wind could absolutely knock these over. I am aware that the weight of the peppers could pull this down, it could uproot itself, and it could die, it could be done. There are risks associated with that, but those are pretty normal seasonal risks. So with that, I hope this kind of shed some light on pruning your peppers versus not. I'm not going to go into depth on how to prune peppers because I just don't have time for that, but we do have several videos on how to prune your peppers if you want to. Go check those out on our YouTube channel. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something. Hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, this is Luke from the My Gardener channel. Remind me, let me know in the comments box down below, do you prune your peppers or do you not? And with that, we'll catch you all later. Grow bigger. See ya. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider clicking this one. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you for your viewership because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing. It's free and we upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. We also have vegetable seeds, fertilizer, or tools. If you need any of those, consider visiting mygardener.com. Links will be in the description box below. We've got you covered. And as always, we'll see you all in the garden. Take care.